Thanks very much for checking out this episode of Turning to Him. If you enjoy what you hear, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave comments, share it with your friends, all the basic stuff. When you do things like that, it makes it easier for other people to find the channel and add goodness into their lives. Thanks again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Turning to Him. My name is Zach Batty, and I am here with Michael Holdaway, who has graciously given me some of his Saturday to share his experience and share his conversion story. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Brother Batty?
Doing very well, thank you. Where are you from? From where are you speaking to me?
I am currently in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've kind of grown up in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area as well.
Okay. Um, Now, Chattanooga, Tennessee, I'm trying to remember, where is that in Tennessee?
It's right on the Georgia-Alabama border.
Alabama. Okay.
I'm
Okay,
not
that's
Georgia, Tennessee,
helpful.
Alabama, and like a little tri-state-ish
Tennessee.
area. Like my house
Okay.
is currently on the literal border for Georgia. Like half my yard is in Georgia,
Seriously, half your yard is in Georgia?
pretty much.
That's got to create like a unique tax situation.
It creates a unique law enforcement situation. Tags not so much.
A unique law enforcement situation. Yeah, okay. I can see how that would be weird.
Yep. I actually just moved into this house. Me and my two roommates are renting it. I grew up in the house next door, which is in Georgia. My parents still live there, so I just ended up getting the house right next to them by turn of luck.
Boy, and also, I mean, as an adult living next to your parents, that creates a third law enforcement unique situation. So there you go. You have three governing bodies over your property.
There was one day that we needed to call law enforcement for that. When I used to live there, that was people that lived in this house, and we had two different counties and two different city agencies out here trying to figure out who was allowed to act, who had jurisdiction to act. It was ridiculous.
Wow, I don't know that I've ever heard of a state line dividing a property like that. That's pretty fun. Tell me what it was like growing up for you.
As terms of like church and gospel wise, or just in general.
Yeah, just in general.
Um, I grew up very I guess the better way to say it is kind of like under a rock. I didn't really understand much of what reality was, didn't understand much of life was. I was severely neglected by both of my parents.
Okay.
And my grandparents, no one really raised me. I was just kind of around. And my grandparents were like, yeah, we're not going to teach you this thing. That's your parents' job. So I kind of went through my younger years just stumbling around, didn't really have any guidance from them. Um, Elementary school, same thing. Middle school, same thing. Got to high school, I picked up on my band director, and he started giving me some guidance. Like I made some good friends. I started to be able to learn a little bit more. Got to left high school, went to college, and I didn't actually start learning about stuff that I probably should have until my second year of college. Then I was like, wait a second. People were like, you don't know that you're supposed to learn that as a kid, and I'm like, I didn't learn anything as a kid. So I'm still, even current day, learning things that I was supposed to be learning as a child or a young adult.
Give me an example. What do you mean by that?
Just kind of like social cues and stuff. I did not know I can't really give you an example. Like that's the hard part is there's so much that I don't understand you are supposed to learn that I just don't know until somebody tells me and that just clicks into my head.
Okay. All right. So going back to your early childhood, pre-elementary school, it sounds like, I mean, your parents provided food, clothing, shelter, but maybe not much else. Is that fair to
Pretty
say?
much. Yep. My
Uh, Go
parents
ahead.
were my parents were drug addicts. And my dad is a severe alcoholic who's now trying to get better, but only like literally a month ago has he started trying to do that. So they would rather do that than spend time with me. So there were
Sure.
often times where they would sit in the living room and I'd be like, "Hey, can I hang out with y'all?" It's like, "Nah." They'd light it up or light whatever up, and then they'd send me back to my room, and that'd just be that. That's how
Okay.
it was for until I left.
Okay. So I mean, all through elementary school. Why did you go to elementary school? Did they send you to school? Did your grandparents send you to school? Did the state? How did that work?
Uh, just kind of hopped on the bus and went to the public school system. My parents were like, "Hey, go to school," so I did.
Yeah. Wow. So you made it through school. At what point did you start looking around and saying, I think my upbringing is different than most people?
When I was 22 years old in college.
Okay, so even in junior high, high school, you didn't really have a perception that other families operate a little differently than mine.
Yeah, didn't even have an idea to look around for it. And from my educational background, I have learned that that is often something that happens. People that, if they're not being very perceptive or if they've never experienced other things, and I went to a couple of my friend houses quite a bit, but it didn't seem different.
Okay, just because you were playing in their rooms just like you played in your room.
Pretty much, literally stayed in my room the entirety time when I was growing up. Didn't spend time anywhere else.
How big a school was your high school?
I went to Ridgeland High School. I think there were about 1,500 kids there, but it's also like very heavily gang affiliated high
Okay,
school. I didn't
okay,
get involved in none of that stuff. I was the band nerd that sat in the band hall.
okay. So, yeah, so let's touch on. Okay, so elementary school and middle school slash junior high. Um, you're just kind of going through the system, but really nothing has triggered you. You're just floating through life, kind of surviving.
Yeah, pretty much. But I didn't even know I was thriving. I thought I was thriving.
Really.
Yeah, I didn't know anything was wrong. I was just a happy kid, even though everything behind me should have caused the exact opposite.
So you, I assume you learned to read in school. You learn
Yes,
all these things in school because none of that was happening at home.
yes. I remember when I was very little, before I started elementary school, my parents would. Actually, I do remember in elementary school, my parents would often try to get me to do my homework and read and stuff like that. But that's about where that stopped. I
Okay.
remember bringing home those little like fabric bag with a little plastic on it where you can see like your I forgot what they're called, those little books home. And
Uh-huh.
the teachers would be calling like, "Hey, is your son reading this?" And they would try to get me to read those. And I specifically remember like old Bible stories, like the blue back like kid Bible
Yes.
stories.
Yes.
I remember those being read to me, but I was so very young, I don't actually remember when that was. But outside of those, I don't have any memories of my parents like enriching me or trying to push me to do anything in school.
Okay. Did you do okay in elementary school, middle school?
Yeah, I was a bit of a troublemaker. I got held back in first grade. When I went to first grade. I was a big troublemaker. Like when the CRCT, which is the standardized test for moving up to the next grade in Georgia, I just kind of talked through the whole thing, and it's a no talking test. I remember this explicitly. They had this little like construction paper cutout of a dog, like a
Okay.
doghouse. And if you were bad, you got to go sit on this beanbag chair in front of the doghouse.
In the
So I was
doghouse.
often bad, so I could go sit in the beanbag chair. And I would throw chairs. I was a horrible first grader.
Really?
Yes,
Do you
but
remember at all, like, were you just rebellious? You didn't like the system, or is that just how you behaved? Like, there were no rules.
I, I think I just wanted what I wanted. I
Okay.
don't think I was trying to be rebellious or no rules. It's just kind of I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to go sit in the beanbag chair, so I had to figure out how to get the beanbag chair.
Wow. Okay. So you make it through elementary school, you make it through middle school, you hit high school, and you find your first mentor.
Yeah, pretty much. I found my first mentor in my band director, and this guy's super cool. I get to one of my favorite memories from high school is I've been playing the flute for many, many years, but I got to high school barely being able to play at a middle school level. It was horrible. I was last chair. I couldn't play scales. I couldn't do anything. And people would pick on me, make fun of me for it, but they would do it silently behind my back. And my bank director came up to me. He's like, "You can do better than this. He's believing in me, giving me encouragement. He gave me a lesson or two. He played trumpet, so he couldn't really like do much, but uh, he gave me encouragement. And because of his encouragement, because of now somebody's actually telling me, they're reinforcing that I can be something. That's the first time it's ever happened in my life. And I very quickly remember at the end of my freshman year, not only was I sitting very high in my section, I got the most improved award for the entire band. I
Wow.
started toppling seniors out of their chairs. I moved up pretty quickly.
Just because a band director not only showed you positive encouragement, but said, hey, you can do better than this.
Hmm. And I went from being the guy that could barely hold his flute to being, I think I was like third or fourth chair, something like that. I was pretty high up,
Wow. By the time you hit high school, how long had you been playing the flute?
3 years. I
Okay.
started in middle school.
All right. So you'd kind of fumbled around for 3 years, and then somebody gave you, again, the point that sticks out to me is somebody just didn't give you just positive enforcement of just, hey, you're doing great, buddy. Everybody loves you, which is important. But he also added structure and said, you can do better than this. You're a good person, but let's help you be better.
Yeah, there was one specific time that I remember that after my freshman year, we were playing a song. I think this was my sophomore year. We were playing a song called Persis. It's a grade four song, and it's got some wicked runs in the back of it. And I was struggling with those runs, but I was doing better than most of the people. But I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. He brought me into his office to play because how well we did on those runs was going to determine our seating position,
Okay.
our chair. And he's like, Michael's got this because I was doing it. I was telling him how I was practicing. He heard me every morning because during lunch, I'd eat lunch very quickly, come into the band room and practice. He's like, Michael's got this. Michael's got this. And that gave me a lot of encouragement to want to play very well.
Yes. Wow.
And after the seniors left my junior and senior year, I sat second chair the whole way through. My ex at the time, she was first chair and I just couldn't be her.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Uh, why the flute? What caught your attention about the flute?
It's such a pretty instrument. Like when I was in middle school, I remember watching a show called iCarly,
Okay.
and that's the first time I had ever seen the flute and knew it existed. This girl was walking the street playing flute. I was like, "Oh, that's a pretty instrument. That's cool. I didn't know that existed. Where can I do that thing?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I got into band, forgot the flute had existed. My, I think her name was Miss Carroll, our middle school band director. She was a percussionist, but also knew how to play flute, clarinet, no, the whole shebang. She pulled out a flute one day and started playing. I was like, "That I want to do that." Then when they came in, it was like there was a trombone, and I remember the sound effect of dun dun dun. So I was either gonna get a trombone or a flute.
Okay.
Picked flute because it sounded pretty.
Yeah, yeah. It is a beautiful instrument. Plus, I mean, the flute, related to the piccolo, it's a really neat sound. That's cool. Okay, how does this change your life? Does your band teacher's mentorship overflow to other parts of your life, or is it just kind of contained
Absolutely.
in a band?
It overflowed to all aspects of my life. I started wanting to become a better person. I started becoming disciplined. I started doing better in school because I was like a B.C. student throughout the first 2 years of high school. And then I started wanting to apply myself more. I didn't know how to apply myself at the time, but I started realizing that, well, I want to start like paying attention in class more because the band director says if we've, his name was Mr. Chambers, Rick Chambers. Um, Chambers was like, if you want to do better in here, you need to do better elsewhere. So I started learning a little bit more. He taught me how to be on time to things. He taught me how to be disciplined and do what needed to be done. He taught me how to work hard. And that, especially through marching band, because that sucked. But I mean, I loved it, but it sucked. Like one of the things that he always taught us is, as far as timing is if you're on time, like if you get to practice on time, you're late. If you
Yes.
get to practice 15 minutes early, you're on time. Congratulations. Now get yourself ready to go before we start. And that has spread through all aspects of my life. I remember this was my sophomore year, I think. Yeah, this was my sophomore year. I went to church with him. The first time I had ever went to church that I can remember. Well, that I wasn't before elementary, and I wanted to play with him in his pit choir because they have a whole like little orchestra in their church, and
Okay.
I wanted to play. And I really just wanted to be around him. So I would like, can I play in your church on Wednesdays and Sundays? He said, sure. So I would go to the youth stuff beforehand, and then I would play in the pit with them. And it was super cool. I did that
Yeah.
about a year and a half.
Wow.
No, that probably 8 months actually.
Okay. Well, to the Mr. Chambers and all the other Mr. Chambers and Mrs. Chambers out there, this is you change lives, you change the world. Tell me how this affected your home life.
It it didn't really affect my home life that much. I mean, I wanted to practice flute at home. I never really did because I was too scared of doing it in the house. Not because I was afraid of anything happening to me or anything like that. I was just nervous and like a very shy, insecure child, and
Okay.
that carried very much on into my adulthood. But um, I just it didn't really affect too much. It made me want to do better. I was excited for band. Like if I look back at high school without band, I don't know what I would have done. So it was the thing that I loved. It was the thing that I revolved my life around. Everything was band. I hung out with band kids. I went on the band trips. All the people I hung out with outside of school, if I did, were band kids. It was band was my life at that time. Without it, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah, that was your not just your life raft, but you loved that. It was everything.
I did. I remember when I got to college, I was very disappointed I couldn't continue. I went to Dalton State College, and they do not have a band. They do not have an orchestra. They don't have anything. They have a little group. The Dalton City has a little orchestra type thing that meets every now and then, but they don't they accept people, but to get into it at this age, you either have to be a good player or you have to be a student in the music program.
Okay.
I was not a student in the music program, and so I kind of didn't have access to that.
Okay. All right.
So I had to,
Um,
yeah,
Tell me about your relationship with the Savior at this point in your life and growing up.
there was not one.
Okay. So when
I
you go ahead.
I wanted to go to church, and I was kind of confused the entire time. I was like, okay, so Christian God exists. Okay, cool. And I just kind of went along, like, went with the motions kind of thing for
Yes.
about a year. And then after I stopped going to church with him, I just kind of forgot about it, I guess.
Yeah. So was that your first and only experience with really church, those 8 months of playing in the band?
Yes. I remember that I had a friend in high school, or my ex, her best friend would often talk about her family's church and how she hated it, how she was forced to be a part of it, and those kinds of things. Turns out it was this church. And
Okay.
just look, I started looking for a church when I was 16. I started like investigating a little bit. That I was 16 when I went to the church with him. And most of it was an unconscious search, I do believe. But I did start looking when I was about 16. And recently, I have been trying to, I'm also the stake YSA leader for
Hmm.
this area.
Hmm.
And I have been looking back, trying to reach out to inactive YSAs and bring them back into our folds. So I've been looking at the inactive YSAs of the Chat Valley area, which is where I grew up. And I was like, I know every single one of these people. I went to high school with every single one of these people. And not a
Really?
single one of them ever told me about the gospel. Not a single one ever tried to share. And I was good friends with at least a third of the people, or two-thirds of the people on that list. Two-thirds of the inactive YSAs.
Wow. Oh, that's heartbreaking.
At
Um,
least half of them were in the band.
yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, we can definitely come back to that and touch on that. Um, so you have 8 months experience in church, and then it kind of fades away. Um, why do you want to go to college?
I didn't. I didn't care. I was just kind of like going where the wind put me. I thought I was a smart kid because I got a A+ in my chemistry class, and I worked very, very hard on my pre-cal class, and I got very, very high grades, and I graduated with like a 3.7 GPA in high school.
Wow.
So I thought I was a
Congratulations.
smart kid. Thank you. But I didn't think I was smart enough to go to college. And the only reason I actually went to college is because my guidance counselor sat me down in the library. She's like, "You're signing up for college now. You pick one, we'll sign you up for it. We don't care. You're gonna go." She
Yes.
helped me sign up for the grants and all those things. I don't remember her name, But without her, I wouldn't have went to college. Wouldn't have happened.
Wow. Okay. So you go to college. How did you pick a major?
I wanted to go into psychology because at the time I wanted to know how people thought, and I wasn't a very good guy. I wanted to learn how to manipulate people better.
Okay.
And like I very much fit with the story of Alma the Younger, which we can get back with later. But I just wanted to learn how to do that. And a lot of my friends actually left me because I ended up going into the criminal justice program because I didn't think I was smart enough to go through this psychology program. It
Okay.
turns out I was wrong. But a lot of my friends actually left me, dropped me as a friend, except for like probably seven people because they thought I was going to become a serial killer and they
Okay.
were scared. Yeah.
So, even though you are excelling in band, you're starting to improve your life in different areas, you're becoming more disciplined. But I mean, you described yourself as you still wanted to manipulate people. There was still a fair amount of rough edges that needed to be polished out.
Yep. And that came from seeing my family environment. That came from seeing how the people that I was around at the time worked, except for my band director. He did not do this. But a lot of people, I saw how they did things. And I did a big thing at crime shows. I was like, I want to manipulate people like that detective does. I want to be able to get people's head, get them to do what I want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you grew up in a very much survival of the fittest environment. Is that true?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. It was far
Okay.
more cushy than it sounds. It was just, I was on my own. Like never had to
Yeah.
worry about food or anything like that. Like dinner was always there, but there was no learning, there was no nurture of any kind.
Okay. Okay. So you start down the psychology route.
Criminal
You
justice.
changed. Say again.
I went straight to criminal justice. I just skipped psychology. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
try it.
Okay. Went straight to criminal justice. Um, and at that point, was it still the desire to be that detective in the crime show and to motivate, or not motivate, but to manipulate people?
It was for about the first 2 months, and then I kind of forgot about that. Um, I learned very quickly, and I think this was an unconscious thing that was happening because I, at the time, would be considered a pathological liar.
Okay.
That was something that I had wrong with me, and I went into this. Every word that came out of mouth was either a truth or a lie, but I could not tell what it was. And other people around me figured it out, some of it. And I felt very uncomfortable with some of the things I was saying. And I started to learn, ooh, this is wrong. Something's going on. And after many, many years of trying to figure it out, I realized manipulating people is not how I want to play this game.
Interesting. Um, why did you figure that out? I mean, why not?
Um, I didn't feel comfortable in the environment that I was in when I was talking about the things I was talking about. Like, I remember when I sat down in my first criminal justice class, I used to like to read criminal law books. And we went around in this first, it was the intro class. Like, why do you want to be in this program? What skills do you have that prepares you for this program? And I remember saying, I like to read criminal law books, and I know more law than probably anybody in this room, which was an absolute lie. But I did that to try to be impressive. I did that to try to make like raise myself
Yep.
above everyone else in the room.
Right,
And the
right.
second I said that, I was like, oof, this feels weird. Why does this hurt me to say this? Because it felt like a deep, dark feeling in my stomach.
Okay. Why did you start to change? You just didn't like that discomfort?
I didn't like the discomfort. I wanted to go away. And that discomfort is what helped me eventually learn that I was a pathological liar.
Okay. So where did that lead you? I mean, you say that at that point you really didn't know the difference between a truth and a lie when you were saying it. You couldn't tell. How did you start to say, I want to change? And so what did you start changing?
It was this change, part of the change took place very quickly, part of it did not. Part of me, so if I'm intentionally telling a lie, I knew it was a lie. But there are many things like you know how some people add to stories or
Yep.
just talk? Yeah, that I didn't know that was a lie. I would do stuff like that and not know that what I was saying was false.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I just stopped doing it. There was so much going on that I didn't have the time to do that anymore. I was too busy listening. I just started listening way more than I was talking.
Okay. Um, so you're starting to make your way through the criminal justice program, and you are also starting to go through this internal change of really becoming a more truthful, less manipulative person.
Hmm. The thing with my criminal justice program is integrity. It said from the first second you sit down in the first class, integrity is what drives law enforcement. Integrity is what drives the criminal justice system. Without integrity, you are nothing. You cannot be trusted. You cannot have a career. No one will have your back because you don't even have your own.
Mm.
And so it's kind of that got beat into my head for years and years and years, and I started to internalize it unconsciously. And I genuinely think that that is what helped me so far is having truth, honesty, just smack you in the face the entire time, going over the court system, learning about all that stuff, just
Yeah.
smack me in the head.
Okay. You make it through the program. Uh,
Yeah, I actually graduated not that long ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
At what point do you get introduced to the church? I'll say for the second time, because the first time
Oh,
was your friend complaining about how horrible it was and how much she hated her church.
that's true, but she never told me what church it was. I wouldn't
Right.
learn that till many years later. I was sitting in the park with my therapist, and I had gone through a horrible turn of events in life, bad relationship. I was just kind of burning up. I thought I was an absolutely horrible, terrible, toxic person in every shape form. My self-worth was literally at the floor. Like, if you could think about a depressing thing you could tell yourself, I was telling myself those things. It was horrible. Um, I had social problems super, super bad, like to the degree that the state of Georgia was like, here's a social interactions coach and here's a therapist.
Okay.
And I was sitting with my therapist and some missionaries reached out to me on Facebook. They're like, "Hey, would you like to meet with us and learn about our beliefs?" And I would talk to my therapist about this because she was the literally the only human that I could talk to at the time. I couldn't talk to people anymore. Um, and I was like, "I don't want to talk to these girls. What do you think I should do?" She's like, "You're gonna go talk to them." I was like, "What
Really?
do you mean I'm gonna go talk to them?" She's like, "I don't care if you want to know about their beliefs or not. You need to learn how to talk to people again." Because I at that point struggled the conversation you were having. I couldn't get a word out to you at that time. It wouldn't be able to happen.
Okay.
Um, she's like, I was like, "I'm not gonna go do it. You're not gonna make me do this." And she's like, "You're either gonna go talk to those missionaries or we're gonna cease services." I was like, "I guess I'm going to
Wow.
talk to the missionaries." So I texted the missionaries back and I said, "I'll make you a deal. If you can meet me at I think it was like 7 to 8 on Tuesday and Thursday, I will talk to you." So I made them come to the park that I was at directly after my therapy appointments at the park,
Yes.
and I would meet them right after my therapist. So this was in early 2019 or late 2019, early 2020. COVID just hit. Missionaries were being pulled back from abroad. This girl's name was Sister Bushman, and she was in Chat Valley for about 9 months, give or take a little bit. And for that duration, we talked about what I wanted to talk about pretty much. Sometimes, like, we had a deal. I told them the first time I met them, "I'm using you as a social experiment to try and build myself up so I can talk to people and nothing more. I don't care about your beliefs. I don't really want to hear them." The Book of Mormon play, that's all I knew about LDS at the time.
Yes.
And I was bashing these missionaries for about 9 months.
Wow.
But
And how did they respond to that?
when I told her she was a social experiment, her and her companion, she's like, "Okay. As long as you allow us to share at least 5 minutes of our message, the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes, you can say we can talk about whatever you want."
Okay.
And they just let me go, and we grew to be friends.
Yeah. Um, you were able to talk to them though at the beginning.
It was more of me listening for the first little bit and asking
Okay.
questions, and I was particularly afraid of women, so it was very, very hard. But it was easier to talk to them than I thought it would be.
Had you done any type of, I mean, you were on Facebook. Had you done any type of outreach to the church at all? Or from your
Never.
perspective, it really was just a random act. These missionaries reached out to you.
It was a random act that these missionaries reached out to me. I've never reached out. They somehow found me on Facebook and said hi.
Amazing. I mean, we know there's no such thing as a coincidence, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you talk with the missionaries for 9 months. Um, is there any part, or is there a point in time in which you start thinking to yourself that this is no longer a social experiment?
Really, not consciously. I grew to see them as friends, and I grew to be excited for our meetings, not to learn about the church or their beliefs, but just to have my friends to talk to. My best friend, when I graduated high school, I didn't talk to him for 2 years after high school. So during this time frame, I wasn't talking to him
Okay.
because I was so removed from reality. So I guess, lack of better words. So I looked forward to seeing these people every week because they were friends that I could talk to.
Okay. What happens though? I mean, 9 months goes by. What
Um,
changes?
There, another sister came. So her name was Sister Cunningham. She came, not Sister Cunningham, Sister Farmer, red-haired girl from California.
Okay.
She came in for about 6 of those months, or I don't remember how long she was there. But I didn't like the missionary that came in after Sister Bushman left, so I stopped meeting with them after a while because I'm not going to be in a situation in which I don't like you. I was far too angry at the world at the time. I was far too cold. I was far too emotionally numb to care. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go find something else to do. So I did. And I stopped meeting with the missionaries for the most part. I remember when I did start meeting with Ashton again, Ashton Pritchett, he's my best friend, well, my male best friend, I would go and just bash everything that they had said. So I stopped talking to the missionaries for a couple months, and some elders reached out to me. And at this point, I got a new guy had started at my workplace, and he was very, very anti-religion and very, very intelligent and made very good logical arguments that talking about God of the gap and just how science refutes and all this kinds of stuff. And I'm a sponge. I'm very impressionable even now. With all of that in my ear and us having intelligent conversations about stuff outside of that, like he was a history buff. He could tell you anything you wanted. It was awesome.
Hmm.
But that worked its way into my head, and I became agnostic and very hard agnostic very quickly. Because at first I just didn't believe anything, and then I was like, yeah, I believe something, but definitely not the Christian God. So I just kind of was borderline atheist agnostic for a very long time. So missionaries would keep reaching out to me. I would go from like red dot, yellow dot, which is like do not contact to contact to we're teaching this guy, green dot, those kinds of things.
Hmm.
And I remember for about the next 2 years, I would go on and off different missionaries. I probably met with 30 different sets of missionaries over those 2 years. Um, I want to talk about aliens. I want to talk about Heavenly Mother. I would want to talk about all the things the church generally doesn't want to talk about, like as you're trying to teach somebody. Those were the only
Yeah.
things I was interested in. The secondary questions, I guess, as we call them.
Yeah.
Those were the
Yeah.
only things I was interested in. I didn't care about the primary questions. I made fun of Joseph Smith a lot, the Golden Plate, those types of things. And I would actively try to shake every single missionary's belief to try to get them to quit the church, to try to make them quit faith, try to make them become like me at that time.
Why? Why do you think that was important for you to try to do?
Because I thought they were lying to themselves. I thought they were all liars. I thought they were hypocrites because no offense to the Baptists, but I grew up around Baptist people, really churchy people, and a lot of them are hypocrites. I'm not saying everyone is, but a lot of them are hypocrites. They don't preach they don't sow what they preach. They are all of the morals that they purvey. They don't follow them, and it's kind of like blowing holy smoke to make yourself appear good. They'll quote Bible verses at you, whatever, but it's kind of like they shifted the word of God into the word of man, and that they worshipped the word of man, not the word of God. And that was just how I grew up in the Bible Belt. That's what I experienced. So I thought every religious person was like that. So
Sure.
I didn't care. I wanted them to learn that they were wrong, even though they weren't.
Okay. And let me pause there and go back. When we left you at high school, it seemed like you were trending up socially, emotionally, academically, everything's going well. And then we meet you when you start meeting with the missionaries, and you are on the verge of not being able to hold a conversation with anybody but your therapist. What happened? Where was that downward turn?
So when I went to college, I really didn't have any friends. Um, my only friends that I considered were the professors. I had a girlfriend at the time, but the relationship was not healthy for either one of us, and it just over time, it mentally destroyed me in ways I never would have thought it would have, especially because for those that were involved in the relationship, it didn't look like it. But I was slowly on a downward spiral, getting worse, not just to me, but to her, um, every single day. It, I felt trapped. I felt alone, even in this relationship. And it kind of just got to me. I was also learning depressing things. I became emotionally numb to the point that I didn't really know what happiness was anymore. I couldn't feel joy, couldn't feel happiness. The only thing I could feel was sadness, sorrow, and anger. Outside of those things, I couldn't feel anything. And until probably about 9 months ago, a year ago, I couldn't feel anything like that.
Okay,
So
so go ahead.
all of that adding up, and especially with the pathological lying and all that stuff, it's just kind of like brought me to a position. Also, couldn't trust anyone. I was not allowing myself to be vulnerable and let anyone in whatsoever. I wouldn't even trust myself.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where you're at, and that takes you through meeting 9 months worth of missionaries that you really enjoy, and now 2 years plus that of, I mean, like you said, really being an Alma the Younger figure of trying to actively shake missionaries' faith and try to bring them away from the church in an effort to point out to them their own hypocrisy. Okay, now what happens after this?
I started doing the same thing, but to other people's religions. I didn't care who you were. If you were religious, I was going to try and shake you.
Yep.
And I succeeded with a lot of people that were not in the church. I never succeeded with anyone in the church, but I start. So I started caring a lot less about what other people had to say. I started listening to a rapper. Like I got really political, like Tom McDonald. I really like Tom McDonald. He's a really
Hmm.
cool rapper. He's the only rapper that I like, he's just it's very political. But I started listening to him, and it gave me some like I need to start reevaluating things. But I also started listening to Jordan Peterson, if you know who that is,
I don't.
and he's a world-renowned clinical psychologist, and he's a cool guy.
Okay.
I actually have one of his books right here. I'm reading Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. But I was listening to his. Well, actually, it was my liberal teacher that pushed me. We were talking. This was my favorite things to study in college were sex trafficking, domestic violence, and like family violence, those types of things. Those are what I was into because I wanted to. Oh, back to your previous question. I wanted to. That's not why I went to college. After about my first couple months, I wanted to help people and prevent people from being hurt anymore. So I whipped into those subjects. But anyways, I found Jordan Peterson and just heard him talk a couple times, and I found a book series called a lecture series called the Biblical Analysis or the Psychological Analysis of Biblical Stories. And they're about 16 episodes, they're about 2 to 4 hours long each. And I started listening to those because, like, yeah, I don't believe the Bible is the Word of God, but I believe that there are good morals that we can get out of it because I started wanting to build myself up for some reason. Stuff was going on, and I wanted to learn how to be better. So I was like, what morals can I get out of the Bible without actually having to believe it's the Word of God? Thinking that he could do that because at the time, I didn't know he was Christian and he didn't advertise himself as such. So I listened to that, and it very quickly put me on the path of I need to learn more about God. I need to learn more about Christianity. I need to learn more about this stuff.
Okay. Um, so you feel this drive in you to learn more about God and Christianity. Where does that take you?
Um, it takes me to just listening. A group of missionaries reached out to me probably 4 months before uh, I started listening to that, and I met with them. I wanted to talk about aliens. I asked them about gods, and yeah, the most probably assaultive questions that I've ever asked missionaries, I asked them,
Hmm.
and they were very quickly like, I don't know, those kinds of answers. So it just took me to just listening to more of his stuff. Like I wanted to learn more of what he was talking about. I wanted to learn how to improve myself, understand how I thought, how I felt, those kinds of things. Because at this point, I had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I had
Hmm.
been diagnosed with, I think it was chronic depression, various different forms of anxiety disorders. And I was wanting to learn about myself, to learn how to fix these issues. And I remember one of the things that Jordan Peterson was talking about in one of those lectures was that people with BDP often know they have BDP. I did know I had BDP, but and they're smart enough to know how to fix it. They just don't have the motivation to do so, so they need outside help. And so I kept listening to him to try to get that outside help to fix myself in the ways I didn't know how to. I wanted to fix myself. So I just kept listening to him.
Okay. Um, at some point, you start meeting with the missionaries in a non-antagonistic way.
Yes. So this was December of 2023. No, 20, yeah, no, December 2022. Um, my depression had gotten a lot worse. I wanted to kill myself. So I I was struggling with that daily. Some missionaries reached out to me. They were like, I was actually on a motorcycle driving down, going to a place where I knew it'd be really easy to do so. Because on a
Hmm.
motorcycle, you ride into traffic is yeah. Um, but I was praying, or not praying. I was like, man, I wish I would have listened to those missionaries more when they talked to me, because I was wanting to meet with the missionaries again, but I didn't know how to reach out. I never thought to use Google. I never thought to do that. I was just like, I never knew how to do it. And they didn't have any of my information outside a messenger. That's all they had. They didn't know where I lived, not phone number, nothing like that. So I was driving and I heard a beep on my phone, like the messenger beep. And I was like, whatever. So I pulled over. I was like, I might as well check this last message before I go. And it was some sister missionaries. Um, from Chat Valley, and they're like, "Hey, would you like to have a lesson with us? We saw that we've taught you in the past." And I was like, "Well, there ain't no coincidences."
Yeah.
At least at the time, I was like, "Man, this is a coincidence, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And I think we had a video lesson. I don't exactly remember what it was. And then after that, we went, or they invited me to. I've been to the church a couple times, but I've never went in the church.
Hmm.
Um, they invited me to it was December 10th. They invited me to the Christmas party, December 10th, 2022 at Chat Valley Ward. And I went. I didn't want to go at first. I was like, nah, I'm not going to go. They're like, are you sure? Like, it'd be fun. So I ended up going. And they told me to be there at like 8. I ended up getting there at 7:45, but there were no cars there. And I waited until like 8 o'clock and there were still no cars there. So I left thinking I was at the wrong spot.
Okay.
And I went to the middle. I drove like 45 minutes out of my way. They called me. It's like, hey, where are you at? I was like, I'm looking for the building. I'm like, I'm in the middle of farmland. I don't see nothing. Did you guys rent something? About 15 minutes of conversation later, like, just come back towards the church and we'll show you where we are. I was like, I'm just going to go to the church, not towards the church. And I'm like, that's where we are. I was like, can you just tell me you were at the church? She's like, why would we be somewhere else? I was like, you told me you were having a big party. I thought you'd rent something. I don't know. And you had these 3 missionaries outside jumping in the rain, waving at every car, trying to flag me down. They
Yes.
were a trio at the time. I get there, I pull in. There were no there were no seats left. There was one seat left that the sisters had saved for me beside a family. Their name is the Castos,
Okay.
and I love the Castos. They're amazing. And they welcomed me in. I was super stiff. I was super like cold feeling. I just was very uncomfortable in the environment. But the Castos welcomed me like I was family, like even though they had never met before in their life. And I was like, this is weird. But they welcomed me. The missionaries welcomed me. We chatted up. And this one missionary, man, she ticked me off. She was arrogant. She was confident. I didn't want to be around her. Turns out she was the one that found my dot and was reached out to me. Um, but I had fun at the party. There was a little nativity thing, and I was like, felt really uncomfortable because I hated religious Christian music. It left me feeling super bitter inside.
Okay.
Um, as I was leaving the party, they're like, "Hey, would you like to come to church with us tomorrow?" I was like, "No, thanks for asking though." And I went home. And I was like, "Well, maybe I do want to go to church with them tomorrow." And I opened the phone. I texted them. I was like, "Hey, I kind of do want to go to church now. What time does your church start?" Man, they didn't text me until like 20 minutes before the church started, and I live like 20 minutes from the church. So I threw on my 3-piece suit and I sped down to the church as fast as I could. And I walked in the church, and it felt so out of place, but so much warmer than anything else I had felt in my life. But it was weird because I didn't really feel it, but now I can say that I did feel it. Um, I walked in there, and the sisters were like, "Come over here, sit with us." And had little notebooks that I would carry with me everywhere, and I started taking notes. I was just analyzing people left, right, left, right, left, right, looking to see what they wanted affirmations for, looking to see the pains in their life, looking to see like all the negative things. That's all I was looking for. And yeah, that was the first day I went to church, was December 11th.
Okay. Um, how did that start to change? I mean, like you said, you're looking around thinking, oh, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I assume that you're thinking, here I am sitting with all these hypocrites. I'm just going to analyze them and figure them out.
That's exactly what I thought. I actually still have the notes from my first day of church. I bought a big giant like leather journal, and I took all my like 8 months of notes and started transposing them into this journal. Man, it took me weeks to do that. There was a lot,
Yeah, yeah.
but I it's exactly what I thought. I was like, this is a hypocrite. They're up here talking, and they don't want anything more than affirmation for their issues. They don't want anything more than somebody to feel bad for them about something, to make them feel good about their problems.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that that was a bad thing to think or say at that time. But it started changing because the missionaries had started giving me a lot of lessons with the members. Like the members that really changed my life were the Castos, the Evans, especially Rick Evans. He's also the guy who had my temple prep class that I recently finished. It was a
Okay.
solo temple prep class. It was awesome. But they would often come to my lessons, and then I met a family called the Sellers. They started helping me out in far more ways than I even understood. They have a little program called A Little Bit of Personality. It's a website, and all the stuff about like how to cognitively understand what's going on in your head. And with between that and the lessons from all these other people, I started learning more and more about myself. Um, I remember one specific lesson with the Evans where they came in with the sisters, and they're like trying to teach me how to feel the spirit. And he was like, if you just sit here quietly, because at this point we're all just talking around, you can hear. And I was like, are you about to talk about that clock on the wall back there? How you can hear the ticking? Is that what you're trying to make an analogy to? He's like, everybody's like, what clock? And I was like, be quiet, you can hear it. And the clock was so loud to me that it was annoying me. So I was like, yeah, I understand your analogy very, very well. Um, the let's see, basically it was reading. The thing that really hit me though was reading the scriptures. That's when things started to change. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't. I would say I probably couldn't recognize the feeling of the spirit for a very, very long time. And I wasn't reading either. Like the missionaries thought I was reading because I was lying to them.
Hmm.
This girl's name was Sister Phillips. Her name is Elle Phillips. She's from Utah, the Bountiful area ish, somewhere in there. But she, at the time, and Sister Cunningham were trying to get me to read the scriptures. And I told them I was reading. And she came up to me. She's like, "Cool. Have you finished the first chapter?" I was like, "Yeah, I finished the first chapter. It took me a long time though. This book is a lot longer than I thought it was. It took me a couple of days to read the first chapter. I never even opened. I never looked at it. I was lying out my teeth, and she knew I was. But she let me go with that for about 3 weeks. Every week I'd say I had read a chapter, and that they're getting longer. They're getting more difficult to read. Just digging my own hole.
Yes.
And then one day she told me something. She yelled at me. She's like, "You are not reading those chapters. We're gonna sit here and read right now. Open your book." Because I would always carry the book with me. So we opened the book, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is about to happen?" And she's like, "You're gonna read this whole chapter right now." And I did. I read that chapter in about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Now was that so hard? Why didn't you read before now?" I was like, "'Cause I didn't wanna." And she's like, "Do you feel the spirit?" I was like, "I feel you yelling at me."
Yeah, it's because it's hard to feel the spirit with you in my face.
Um, but that's when it all started to change for, well, I mean, all these times where things all started to change, but that was another like pivotal point. He's like, "Look, if you don't want to read a whole chapter, that's fine. Just read a verse a day, one verse a day." And I was like, "That's not going to be enough. I'll get bored. I won't read it." She's like, read 5 verses a day, just 5 verses. That's all you need to read, just something. I was like, okay, I'll read 5 verses a day. At this time, I was a security guard in a shack, so
Okay.
I didn't have anything to do all day.
Right.
So I would sit there, I read 5 verses, I put it down, I pull up my laptop, I start playing video games. I'd be like, man, I'm bored. So I'd be like, well, let me read a chapter today. I start reading a chapter, and then I start reading a chapter every single day. And that very quickly evolved into me setting a program for myself that I read at least a chapter a day. And if I didn't read a chapter, but if I didn't finish it by the end of the week, I got a penalization, one extra chapter the next week for every chapter that I didn't read. So I
Okay.
very quickly started reading my chapters because
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
punishing myself if I didn't.
Yeah.
And I just kind of kept doing that. I almost stopped reading in Second Nephi because I got tired of. I don't remember what verse it was, but it was saying the exact same thing over and over. And it said like 5 times in like 2 verses. I was like, I can't read this. This is so confusing. I hate this. And she's like, look, 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 look. Just you got this. Keep going. Whatever chapter is like 84 verses long in Second Nephi. She's like, when you get to that chapter, take 2 days to read that chapter. Don't try and read that all at once. We want you to keep reading. Just
Yes. Yes.
yeah, pushing me through there. I remember the first time I felt the spirit while reading was Alma 32. She was
Okay.
talking about seeds,
Yes.
and she was referring to Sister Bushman. She was referring to like, it doesn't matter if you believe right now, just let those seeds plant, nourish them. What you're doing right now, you're nourishing them. Just keep doing it, keep trying. And if it's a good seed, it'll grow. You know, that whole shebang.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that was the first time I had ever actually known that I felt the spirit was listening to her talk about Alma 32 and reading that with her
Okay.
and her companion.
Yeah. Yeah. From how long that you started really reading the scriptures until you decided to be baptized?
Man, that's a whole nother story. Um, it took about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
I and that was a long, hard road. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the first time I stepped foot into that church, I could have been baptized because I wasn't gonna leave. I was investigating, I was interested. It was just a learning experience to me. But I never felt like I was gonna leave. I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna keep learning. And when I start doing that, I'm just gonna keep going. I know myself well enough now to be like, if I'm putting myself in a situation to learn about it, I'm gonna keep going till I got what I want out of it, or I'm never gonna stop.
Yeah.
Um, but sorry, repeat your question again. I guess I tried.
How long from the time you started reading the scriptures, really actively reading the scriptures, till getting baptized?
5 months.
5 months.
I got baptized 5 months after I really started reading the scriptures. I would have
Okay.
been baptized before that, but the mission president and some elders made it very difficult for me.
Okay. At what point did you start thinking, I think I want to be baptized?
I didn't until I
Okay.
did. Like it was a quick flip of the switch. The missioners every lesson was like, "Would you want to be baptized? When do you think you'd be baptized? Just put a number or put a thing on the or a date on the calendar. Just pick a day. We'll go ahead and set you up for that day. It helps. Believe us, it helps." I was like, "We're not going to do that. Just leave me alone. I'll tell you when I'm ready. Until then, we're going to just leave me alone."
Okay.
And they kept going and going and going, and I was like, "Look, leave me alone. Here, fine." This was probably in like March. I was like, December 11th, 2023. That's when I'll be baptized. And they're like, we
Okay.
won't be here then. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You won't. You leave me alone. You want me to put a date on the calendar? Fine. A year after me investigating this church is when I'll be baptized if I truly do want to be.
Yes.
And they're like,
Yes.
fine, we'll stop. But
Thank
they
you.
put it on the calendar. And
Okay.
then I felt less constricted. I felt freer to explore things
Yes.
after they weren't barking down my neck for baptism every 30 seconds, which is an
Okay.
exaggeration, of course. But um, and I was talking to the Sellers, Justin Sellers and Khalil Sellers, and we were talking about a book that he had written and talking about how um, what baptism does and just kind of how it changes life. Like thoughts are very powerful things, but actions themselves that are kind of brought on by our thoughts, our desires, our intentions are far more powerful things. And how a baptism is the culmination of those things to just kind of push yourself through the gate to take that step leap of faith that you never would have taken, the only way to take it is to do it. And just how powerful that can be in changing a person's life. And talking about that for a couple of days, reading, I think that was like a couple paragraphs over and over and over and over again, learning about my definition of faith, which was super important to me. Because one thing that I learned from Jordan Peterson is define everything. What does that thing mean? If you don't know what it means, if you can't define that thing, you need to figure it out.
Mm.
So that's what I did. I defined everything. Everything has a definition. And if it doesn't, I got to work on it.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember one night after Bible study, I drove back to church. You're not supposed to be talking to any missionaries at this late, but I drove back to the church because they were just finished lessons. I was like, hey, y'all, I want to be baptized. And that was in July. No, it wasn't. It was a couple months before July. And they're like, we'll start the process.
Okay. Wow. So that is fast. So at one point you just knew, like you said, it clicked. It snapped for you.
It literally snapped me within about 5 minutes. I was kind of like, well, do I? Do I not? Like, what does this actually mean? What is this going to do for me? Like, do I care about this?
Yeah.
I remember a couple months before that, ladybugs are a huge part of my conversion story too. It's really weird. Um, I didn't believe in Jesus Christ. I didn't believe in Jesus Christ until after I had decided almost I wanted to be baptized because it was a weird feeling. I wouldn't allow myself to be vulnerable enough to do it. Um, and if it wasn't, I'm very happy that sisters were the people that were teaching me instead of elders because I would have not listened to elders at all. There's a meme that I found a while back that's Darth Vader that says, it's Luke to Darth Vader's, no elder can baptize me, pulls off mask. Well, I'm no elder.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
his sister. Yeah. And being around, I guess, women helped me be vulnerable, helped me open up and want to, I don't know. It was weird. But between the sellers and the sisters, I was able to learn how to trust people again. I was able to learn how to, and the gospel, I was able to learn how to have emotions again. I was able to learn how to feel happiness, how to feel joy, how to feel peace, those types of things. And um, I remember I had a lesson with, I was sitting in the church one day and a ladybug, there were a bunch of ladybugs in the corner because it's mating season. And I was like, this is how I learned that God exists, or how I thought like God actually exists. I was like, hey, God, if you exist, make me friend of ladybug. I want one of those to fly down to land on me right now. Now that didn't happen. But 2 weeks later, a ladybug flew down and landed on the floor in front of me and walked directly towards me for about 45 minutes. I watched that ladybug walk. And then it stopped directly in front of me. I pulled the card out of my pocket. It climbed up in the middle of the card and I just held it for a little bit. I went around the church showing it to people because I was all excited because I was learning about ladybugs anyways. STFs, or sexually transmitted funguses. Ladybugs would have the like little chrysalises on the back of them. I was like, look at this ladybug, look. And I went and had a lesson with ladybugs have been like a staple ever since. I went to a 10-hour lesson with a member because I was struggling with having faith in Jesus Christ and all these things. And in him trying to help me understand how to open myself up, how to trust, how to be vulnerable enough to let Jesus Christ into my body, into like to allow him to help me because I wouldn't.
Mhm.
It started pouring. Like it just started raining so hard. Like you ever seen the rain that's so hard you can't see outside a couple of raindrops in front of your face?
Yes.
It was doing like that, and we were under a pavilion in a park. And every time I just started kind of like ignoring him or forgetting what he was saying, a ladybug would hit me. I got hit 5 times by ladybugs. They were flying in from the rain. Like I don't know how a ladybug can withstand that, but a ladybug flew in from the rain, hit me in the face, like right around my cheek, flew away. One hit me in the eye, one hit me in the mouth, one hit me, flew away, like bounced off, and then hit me again, and then flew out over the course of the 10 hours that we were there. And I was like, this is wild.
Yeah.
But they would always get my attention back to him every time. Uh, I started learning how to be vulnerable. There was a day that when the sisters were being transferred, I thought that without the sisters, had no testimony. I
Mhm.
had no like foundation to build on. And I remember I was working concert security at the time. You know the band Coin, you ever heard of them? The
Yes.
boy band? Um, they were at Riverbend in Chattanooga at the time. And I was like, this is just too much. I want to go home. Heavenly Father, I started calling him Heavenly Father at this point. I was like, this is right after I decided to get baptized. It's like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. Blah, 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 blah. So as I'm going to talk to my supervisor about getting left off shift so I can go home, I turn around to see coin setting up, and I'll be darned if there wasn't a like 15, 20 foot inflatable ladybug on the stage. Their entire set was ladybug themed. All the guitar or all the drum heads and the drum pads, they were all ladybug themed. There was a big grass hedge with ladybugs climbing all over it. Everything was ladybug. And I was like, everything's okay. Just stay here. Is that what you're telling me? And that's exactly what he was telling me. Ladybugs everywhere. Um, let's see.
That's
They're,
great.
yeah, ladybugs are a
Well,
huge part of that.
as I've kept you here for an hour and you've been very generous. As we're wrapping up here, what advice would you give elementary school Michael if you could look back?
I don't know. Because Michael didn't think there was anything wrong. I would say ask about things, want to learn about things. Ask your friends what they think about different things. Ask your friends if you can come over to their house, especially as you age. Ask your friends if what their belief structures are. Ask your friends what their family is like. Those kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, would you mind sharing your testimony with me?
Yeah. I do have a testimony that this church is the Church of Jesus Christ on this earth today. I have a testimony that our Heavenly Father exists, that our Heavenly Father loves us and cares for us, and that regardless of what we think of ourselves, regardless of how we feel we're doing in this life, He is there for us and He will walk beside us. The iron rod is put here, the gospel is put here for us. It was made for this day that we are currently living in. Heavenly Father knew that we would need this in this time, that without the Spirit, we would be struggling more immensely than we could even hope to imagine. And that through the gospel, through Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father and their love for us, that as long as we are willing to have faith in ourselves and have faith in them, that we can be better than we were yesterday, we can be better than we are today, and we can be better than we are tomorrow because of the love that they have for us. Jesus Christ literally sacrificed himself so that we could be able to make this progress. That was the whole plan. And we will eventually return to Heavenly Father and be beside him as long as we stay on the covenant path and follow him. Follow Jesus Christ.